This is my good friend Charles. And you're a good friend. And you are my good friend. And you have a story to tell today that I'm pretty excited about.
You don't look excited.
Well, it's a good story. Why don't you get started so these boys and girls can hear what a great story it is.
Okay. This story is about the 3 little Christians.
3 little Christians, that sounds kind of like another story that's like the 3 little pigs.
These are Adventist Christians, they're not pigs.
Okay, so these are 3 little Christians. Okay. And so what's going on with these 3 little Christians?
Well, the 3 little Christians, they went to church all their lives. They were brought to church when they were little kids, just like many of you. And they went to church and they sang the songs in Sabbath school, and they prayed and read their Bibles, and they went to church for years and years until they got to be about the age of some of the kids that are gone away to the youth rally.
Okay. So what goes on with these 3 little Christians?
Well, eventually, when they get to be about that age, they have to decide for themselves if they want to be Christians.
Oh, so just like these little boys and girls here, they're going to be deciding that for themselves as well.
That's right, and it's not going to be because their mom and dads take them. It's going to be because it's their choice.
Okay, so let's find out about the 3 little Christians.
Okay, the first little Christian decides he doesn't want to have anything to do with God.
That's a sad story.
And at that moment,
Okay, all right, so he doesn't want anything to do with God.
he wants to live like the rest of the world. He wants to watch all the same shows, listen to the same music, do all the same things. And he doesn't go to church, well, unless there's something special going on. And he doesn't pray, well, unless he's in lots of trouble.
Okay, so he wants to be called a Christian, but he doesn't want to be a Christian.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so what about the second Christian?
Well, the second little Christian, he's been taught that it's really important to do all the right things, to obey and to avoid all the negative things that the first little Christian wants to do.
So he's all about behavior.
Doing the right thing and not doing the wrong things.
Okay, so what kind of things does he do?
Well, he goes to church, and he pays his tithes, and he prays and reads his Bible. So all the things that a good Christian should do, but
what?
well, he does those things because he thinks that God will be angry with him if he doesn't.
So he doesn't see God as a God of love. He thinks that God will be angry and not let him go.
That's right. He's kind of, well, not kind of, he is miserable.
A miserable Christian. That doesn't sound right.
Well, it's not right. We should be joyful.
We should be joyful. So, what about the third little Christian?
Well, the third little Christian, he has learned that it's important to love God. And so he wants to have a relationship with him.
So, what does he do?
Well, he does all the things a good little Christian should do. He reads his Bible, and he prays, and he sings the songs, and he pays his tithes, and all the things, but he does it because he loves Jesus, not because he's afraid of him.
Oh. So he sounds like he might be a pretty happy guy.
He is.
Okay, so now, based on this story, I'm thinking that there's going to be somebody coming along and visiting each of these 3. And I'll bet it's going to be the big, bad someone.
Well, you're not really good at guessing.
I'm not?
No, it's actually someone really, really good.
Someone who's going to come and visit?
You know, Jesus,
Yeah.
the best one, the really, really good one.
Yes.
He's the one that comes to visit.
Oh. Okay, that's a little different then. So what does he find when he comes to the first little Christian's house?
Well, he goes up to the house, and he stands at the door and knocks. And he calls out, little Christian, may I come in? Because he won't come in unless he's invited.
Okay, so what does the first little Christian do?
Nothing. He doesn't answer anything. So Jesus knocks again and says, little Christian, may I come in? And sadly, all he hears is the volume on the television getting louder.
So he's trying to not hear Jesus.
That's right. That makes Jesus really, really sad.
Well, that would be very sad to not want, for one of your friends not to want to be with you and spend time with you.
So Jesus says, well, I'll try again later, but I'm going to go visit the second little Christian.
Okay, so he'll probably have more luck at the second little Christian's house. What does he find there?
Well, he goes to the second little Christian's house, and he knocks at the door, and he calls out, little Christian, may I come in? And the second little Christian says, who is it? He looks through the blinds, and he sees someone standing there that he doesn't recognize him.
Wait a minute, this is supposed to be a Christian. He doesn't recognize Jesus?
Well, again, he's been so worried about doing the right things and not doing the wrong things, he didn't get to know Jesus for himself.
Oh, so he doesn't really know Jesus at all.
So when Jesus says, it is I, Jesus, I've come to visit, well, he's just not sure. But he decides, well, I'll let him in. And when he gets in, the second little Christian, he spends all his time telling Jesus all the good stuff that he did.
All the good stuff.
How he pays his tithes. He even shows him his bank statement.
He shows him his bank statement.
He's a good little Christian. Or so he thinks.
Okay. And what else does he do?
And he tells Jesus about all the things that he could have done that he didn't.
So he avoided all the bad behaviors.
But Jesus can tell he doesn't want him there.
That's pretty sad to not want Jesus there. So what happens?
Well, Jesus can tell, so he says, I'll come back another time. I'm going to go visit the third little Christian.
So he goes and visits the third little Christian. And what happens?
Well, he doesn't even get a chance to get to the door. The door swings open. The third little Christian sees him coming and runs and throws his arms around him and gives him a great big hug.
So why was it so different for the third little Christian?
Because he knew Jesus and he was expecting him.
And what did they do?
He invited Jesus into his house and they ate together and had a real conversation.
Wow, that is a really good story.
But someone else comes along too.
Who comes?
Now it's time for the big bad Satan.
Big bad Satan. So Satan doesn't leave people alone, does he? Especially if they're Christians.
That's right. So he goes to the first little Christian's house and he sees him sitting there and he walks right in. Because Satan doesn't bother to knock. He'll just barge right into your house with a letter.
And what does he find the first little Christian doing?
Watching TV, listening to the music, all sorts of stuff, worldly stuff. And so what does he do? He asks him, hey, are you enjoying those programs? And the first little Christian says, oh yeah, they're great. And Satan says, have I got something for you? And he pulls out a bag of temptations. And he says, if you like those things, you'll really like these things. And he leaves the bag of temptations with him.
Getting him in deeper, isn't he?
So then, knowing that he's got the first little Christian all squared away, he goes to the second little Christian's house, and he knocks on the door. And he pushes it open a little, and he calls inside. He says, little Christian, let me come in. He doesn't even ask, he just tells him.
And does the second little Christian let him in?
Well, he's kind of scared, because he's heard about Satan, and he knows that Satan's all about tempting him to do things that he shouldn't do, but he listens anyway.
He listens. And what does Satan say to him?
He says, I have some goodies for you. You know, all those things that you really want to do, that you don't do because you're afraid of Jesus, I got all these things right here in this bag. And you can have them all for your own.
He doesn't take them, does he?
Well, he still won't open the door, but Satan's pretty sneaky. And he says, well, little Christian, I'll just leave these right here on the doorstep. And when you want them, you can get them, and no one will ever know.
Now, that's not true.
No.
Because Jesus knows. And the second little Christian knows.
Yeah.
And Satan knows.
Yeah.
So he lied to him.
Because that's what Satan does.
Okay, yes, that is what Satan does. So
So as Satan leaves, he sees the second little Christian opening the door and reaching for the bag of temptations. It's very sad. I'll bet there's different results at the third Christian's house, though. Oh, yes. When he goes to the third Christian's house, he tries the knob on the door, and it won't move. And so he pushes on the door, and it won't move. So he calls out, little Christian, let me in. And no answer. Good, I'm glad he didn't answer. But Satan doesn't give up so easily. And he shoves his shoulder into the door, and he says, little Christian, let me in. And still no answer. So he steps back, and he charges at the door with all his might, and he hits it with his shoulder, and he says, little Christian, let me come in. And he hears a crack, but it's not the door. It's not the door. It's his shoulder. Serves him right. Serves him right. So as he's standing there, rubbing his shoulder, wondering what he's going to do, all of a sudden, the doorknob turns. Oh, he didn't let him in, did he? Well, the door swings open, and Satan gets a mean old smile across his face until he sees who it was opening the door. It wasn't the third little Christian? It was his roommate. He has a roommate? He had invited Jesus to live with him, to stay with him forever. So what did Satan do when Jesus answered the door? He took off out of there so quick, faster than you can say, scram. That was fast. But he dropped his little sack of temptations for the third little Christian. So Jesus picked up the sack, and he asked the third little Christian, what would you like me to do with these? And the third little Christian said, well, whatever you think is best. I trust you, Jesus. So Jesus took that sack, and he crushed it up in his hands until it was nothing but dust, and he blew it away, and it got carried away by the wind. You know, that story kind of talks about three different people there, and we all fit into those three categories sometimes, don't we? We can choose not to serve God. We can choose to serve him because we're afraid that we won't go to heaven, or we can serve him because we love him. So, boys and girls, when you get to the point where you're going to make your decision, I hope you'll decide to serve Jesus because you love him, and you too can live happily ever after. Thank you all very much for listening to the story, and you choose Jesus, and you'll never be sorry. Amen. Thank you all very much.